Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical on YouTube at Stillman and Co. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Again, we will be here all off season long. The Stillman and Company program is going nowhere, so be excited about that. Final in Jacksonville, Jacksonville 41, Tennessee 7. We'll get into the game in just a second. Again, Cam left with the shoulder injury. I can't be upset at Cam. I thought Cam played very well on that first drive. I thought, look, that's what happens in the NFL. To me, it looks like a sprained AC joint. I'm sure he'll be fine long-term, etc., unless he's like Will Levis and decides to make it all about him in the end. But that's a different discussion for a different day. I do want to just start before we get in deep into today's program. I want to tell you about our presenting sponsor. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction. If happy, you'll be, the service is free. So if a customer is not pleased with the work performed, my friends at Hiller will make it right. I know this because I've been using Hiller in my home for years. 100% satisfaction. If happy, you'll be, the service is free. Learn more at happyhiller.com. That's where I go to book. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians. They come in your home and they leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value. That means they care about the customer. Again, I can back that up because I use Hiller. Proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, let's get going on kind of where we are as far as the Titans are concerned. I am watching the Giants, who are going to win. They are blowing out the Dallas Cowboys 34-17. It seems, and I'm not smart enough to know how the strength of schedule is all going to unfold, it seems like a Giant loss would be bad for the Titans. Or I guess it wouldn't really do much for the Titans because Arizona would have a lower strength of schedule. I don't know. And then Arizona would jump the Titans. So it looks like the Titans are going to pick fourth no matter what, but we don't technically know that. Now, Atlanta has just kicked a field goal to go up 19-10. They're going to beat New Orleans. So Carolina is going to make it into the playoffs. Whatever, as far as I'm concerned. Now, let's hit on the game for all of 5 seconds that I think we need to hit on the game. Cam Ward, first drive looked good. He had to throw to Io Manor, in which I thought when I saw the ball come out of Cam's hands and I saw Io Manor make the catch, I thought Cam had actually thrown an off-target pass, which is nothing new for Cam. And then when they showed the replay on Fox, it actually was a great throw by Cam. I don't know why Io Manor stopped. Io Manor, if he's running in stride, Cam puts the ball perfectly there, can cut it upfield, and maybe run into the end zone for a touchdown. Probably wouldn't have run into the end zone for a touchdown, but I thought it was a great throw. And it was a third down throw, and so that was great. And then I like the RPO that they ran. Cam takes it in. I thought that was a good play call from Bo Hardegree. I'm not one of these people that thinks Cam shouldn't have played, and I'm not one of these people that thinks, well, if Cam's going to play, then they don't need to run any plays for Cam to get hurt. I just don't think you can do that. Then Brandon Allen went in the game, and I mean, it was so painfully boring to watch Brandon Allen quarterback the Titans. And the thing that was crazy about Brandon Allen is, at least as far as I'm concerned, is it was so obvious with him in at quarterback. He had one goal: don't get hit. I mean, he made like $1.5 million this year, and he didn't play a single second of meaningful football, didn't play a single second of football. And he comes in, and it's like, all right, I'm just going to get under there, 52, turbo, hut. And then, like, I'm going to throw the ball, and I'm not going to try to get hit. And so that was just brutal. I also wonder, I'm a little nervous or sad to say this. The Giants, they're going to beat the Cowboys. And again, I don't know how this affects the Titans' draft status. I think most people are saying that it could hurt their strength of schedule with the Cardinals. I don't know. It could hurt their strength of schedule with the Cardinals, so the Titans may pick fourth anyways. I guess what I'm looking at is there was a lot from the New York media about John Mara that came out today. And I know that John Mara has cancer, but I think it's prostate cancer, and prostate cancer, very curable. If you get it detected right and everything else, I think it's prostate cancer. And so when I saw the New York media writing stories about John Mara and everything he's been through, not with the cancer, but just, how great of a man he's been, I get a little nervous that the Giants may be winning one for old John Mara. And I hope he's not sick. I obviously has cancer, but I hope he's not going to die, if I could just say that. Okay. So let's get to what I think is the big topic today on Postgame Live. And that is, where do the Titans go from here? And I know a lot of you are going to talk about the coaching search, but I think we need to go back to Friday, when the Titans, in the most beautifully orchestrated Friday news dump, basically told everybody that once again they have changed the hierarchy of the organization, that Mike Borgonzi is now in charge of the Titans. That is what they told us on Friday. And I was amazed at the reaction. First of all, look, there's no way this was completely involuntary for Chad Brinker to do this. But in my experience, as far as the NFL is concerned, nobody ever just voluntarily gives up power for fun. Nobody is ever like, you know what? I'm a better coordinator than I am head coach, and he's probably a better head coach than I would be, so let's make him head coach, and I'll go back to being coordinator. Nobody ever does that. Well, this is the same thing. Chad Brinker, this time last year, after the last game was over, the Titans fired Rand Carthon and announced that Chad Brinker was going to have the final say on all things football. That's what they said. Period. All things football. Brinker's in charge. I had a former general manager say to me at the Super Bowl, that's not really a GM job. Chad is the general manager there. And that is somebody who would know better than you would what the situation is as far as the Titans are concerned. And so Brinker had the ultimate authority. And it wasn't until the trade deadline when I asked Mike Borgonzi about, what do you do and what does Chad do? And he basically said Chad was the assistant general manager, and they brought me in here to run the roster, that people started to say, no, that's the breakdown of power. The reason I bring this up is I think Friday was a big deal. Now, the local media, or at least some in the local media, were saying two things I don't believe. Number one, there was some sentiment of, hey, Chad Brinker, way to go. He stepped back so that they could eliminate ambiguity, and he's going to do his part as what is typically what an assistant general manager does. He's going to step back, and he's going to do what the assistant general manager does. And now Mike Borgonzi, he's going to be, hey, great job. That is so selfless from Chad Brinker. The other thing, and Easton Freeze, I love you, and you know it, but I have to call you out on this. Easton Freeze was like, this is what they've been doing all year long. And Ian Rappaport said something similar. Bullshit. And I'm going to tell you why. They fired Brian Callahan. And when they fired Brian Callahan in October, the statement was released by Chad Brinker. It wasn't released by Mike Borgonzi. It wasn't released by Amy Adams Strunk. It wasn't released by Burke Nihill. It was released by Chad Brinker. The press conference was Brinker's press conference. Borgonzi was sitting there, but it was really Brinker's press conference. Now, all of a sudden, you tell me, oh, no. The one in charge of the coach is actually Borgonzi, who didn't put out the statement when they fired the coach. What this is, and people got mad at me on the program or after the program on Friday, because I said, look, this is how Amy Adams Strunk operates. Amy Adams Strunk cannot have a disastrous season and not blame somebody by firing them. She cannot not do it. I mean, again, they were in first place when she fired J-Rob. Vrabel got the boot the next year. Rand got the boot the next year. Callahan got the boot in the middle of this year. And now Brinker's getting the boot. And look, maybe Chad Brinker stays in what is essentially an assistant general manager position, because by staying, He probably can't get a better job that pays him more money. He's certainly not going to go be a general manager anywhere or a team president anywhere else. So I could see Chad Brinker saying, hey, you know what? I'll just sit back here and just kind of make my millions of dollars and not say anything. And the other side of it is, I think the reason why the Titans didn't just outright fire Brinker on Friday is because if they did, then people would say, this adds to the dysfunction and Amy Adams Strunk fired somebody else. But I think it is an effective firing. Again, Chad Brinker had the ultimate authority. This time last year, Chad Brinker was given the final say on everything football related. And as of Friday, that has been taken away from him. The coaching search, the roster, he's now essentially an assistant general manager. Now, I think that is for the better. Because again, I told you guys in September, after week 3, week 4, I said, here's what I would do to fix the Titans. And the first thing I said I would do is I said I'd fire Callahan and I'd fire Brinker. And I wouldn't fire Borgonzi, though Borgonzi would not be my first choice to run the football team. But if I took over the team and this is the setup and this is the hierarchy, Borgonzi's resume says that it was time for him to get a general manager job. Assistant general manager of the Chiefs. And when you are assistant general manager of the Chiefs, that means that you're going to go get a job to go be general manager. It's if you're one of the good teams and you're an assistant general manager, like the Ravens, traditionally, then you get interviewed for other jobs. When you don't get interviewed for other jobs, or when you shouldn't get interviewed for other jobs, is when you're assistant general manager of a bad team. That is when you should not get those other jobs. So, again, I think what happened is I reported this at the beginning of the year, and nobody wanted to listen. Everybody wanted to put their hands over their ears and la, 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 la. This is true. I said what I heard was that Brinker and Borgonzi were not seeing eye to eye. And I found it very eye-opening that at the press conference where Borgonzi spoke after the deadline, he compared Chad Brinker to an assistant general manager / cap guy. I'm like, that's your boss. And you're going to talk about him like that? So, again, this wouldn't be my choice for Mike Borgonzi to run the Titans if I was just, hey, I'm going to hire a general manager. But given the setup, this is probably the best they can do. And so now Mike Borgonzi will hire the coach. And my guess is, at least this is my hope, is that Amy will look at Mike Borgonzi, the coach he hires, and I hope he gets to hire the coach and not Amy. But I hope that he gets to hire the coach and Cam and says, okay, these three are together. So if they make it, then everybody keeps their jobs and Cam's the franchise quarterback, and whoever Borgonzi hires as head coach, that's going to be the coach for Cam of the future, and Borgonzi's the GM. But if they fail, then I think they should all be gone. And then you can truly, truly start over. That, I think, is the way that I feel about the current setup. But that's not what we're told is going to happen. What we've been told is going to happen is we have been told that the Tennessee Titans are going to run a very thorough coaching search. And I think it was Albert Breer who said that it's not just going to be Mike Borgonzi. He's going to lead the search, but Amy is going to have final say, which, while it does bother me because I don't think Amy knows her ass from a pump handle, I do think that's how it works in the NFL. Is the owner decides who the coach is. The owner ultimately decides coach, quarterback, general manager. That's the owner's call. And if there's a star player who you've got to give $100 million to, or is like the heartbeat of your franchise, like a Derrick Henry, then the owner gets to decide on that too. And that's just how it works. But again, when it comes to the coaching search, what I don't like is I don't like the idea that the Titans want to cast this really, really wide net, and the Titans want to interview everybody, and then they want to decide of whom they interview who the best candidate is. In theory, that sounds like a great idea. Hey, if you don't know Chris Shula and you bring him in for an interview and he wows you, why would you not hire Chris Shula? Because if you blow it on Chris Shula and you just hire him because you don't know him and you hire Arthur Smith or Matt Nagy because you do know them, then what have you really done to your organization? I mean, quite frankly, you've ruined your organization if you go that route and you do that because you had the opportunity to get that guy and you didn't take it. But where I guess I differ here is, and this is a little bit of what I feel like the Titans do, which is they always do the opposite of what they just did. Rand Carthon had no idea what he was doing as a general manager. And we'll get to him in a second because there is a part of this that nobody's going to tell you that I will tell you. But they just got guys with resumes, brought them in for interviews, and then it was like, okay, who works best with Rand? Well, Rand doesn't fucking know what's going on. So now the guy that he's best with also doesn't know what's going on, and it's moron with moron, and that's how you get what you got, where it's 2-3 win seasons in a row. Like if I knew a guy and I knew what he was like as a coach, i.e. a Matt Nagy, and I thought Matt Nagy was a good coach, I don't know Matt Nagy from a jar of Vicks. But if I liked a guy and I sat there and I said, you know what? I know he can coach. I'm going to hire that guy over somebody I don't know because my career is on the line. And we've all been wowed in job interviews before. But if you are working with someone the way Titans ownership should know Arthur Smith, the way that Chad Brinker, and I don't know if he matters anymore, but Chad Brinker should know Mike McCarthy, the way certainly Reggie McKenzie does, the way that a Dave Ziegler probably should know Brian Flores, like that's where it matters to me. So I am leaning towards, hey, I have said this for months. I believe I put this out there in October when I said after the Borgonzi press conference at the bye week, I said, I think it's going to be Matt Nagy. Because Borgonzi in that press conference made it sound like I'm running the show here. And now we know he is. So I think it's going to be Nagy. I thought it was going to be Nagy on Friday. I thought it was going to be Nagy last week. I thought it was going to be Nagy 2 months ago. I still think it's going to be Nagy. If he knows Nagy, which we know he does, and he thinks Nagy is a good coach, he should hire Matt Nagy. I asked Floyd one time. Floyd and Nick Saban were together on the Houston Oilers coaching staff. Floyd was the linebacker coach. Nick Saban was the secondary coach. And I asked Floyd one time, I said, did you know when you worked with Nick Saban at the Oilers that he was going to be what Nick Saban has become? And Floyd looked at me and goes, did I know the guy was a good coach? Yeah, I knew he was a good coach. Did I know he'd be the greatest coach in the history of NC2A football? No, I didn't know that. Because it's impossible to know if somebody's going to be the greatest of all time right away. But I go back to, if you know the guy and you know he's a good coach, then you should hire him. Because far too often these teams hire bad coaches. And there's not a candidate, other than maybe Mike McCarthy, there's not a candidate out there that just screams, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. His resume says so. The way that Mike Vrabel's resume, to a certain extent, said so last offseason. The way that Sean Payton's resume said so when he got hired by the Denver Broncos. So I'm not out on Matt Nagy by any stretch of the imagination. I was shocked yesterday at how many of you, when it came to Matt Nagy on social media, were like, oh, Matt Nagy, he fucking stinks. Vic Fangio carried him that first year. He was so bad in Chicago. And the Chiefs, they're so bad. Why would you want Matt Nagy? I'm like, whoa now. First of all, when Matt Nagy was in Chicago, Matt Nagy farmed out the defensive side of the ball, which I actually think is a good idea for an offensive head coach, especially one who's going to call the plays. And in Chicago, he called the plays. So I'm fine with farming out that side of the ball. And so if Matt Nagy wants to farm out that side of the ball, bring in Brandon Staley to coach the defense, fine. Bring in an old pop-pop. Bring in Jim Schwartz to run the defense. Fine. Go do it. Jim, here's the defense. It's yours. That I'm fine with. So I don't care if Vic Fangio carried him. Who gives a rat's ass? Again, he's going to be hiring a defensive coordinator here. I hope he hires one as good as Vic Fangio. But what I think I've got to address with the people when it comes to your opinions on these coaches, and boy, get ready to hear me talk about this because I am going to just beat this over and over again, and I need you to hear me out on it. I do not know any of these candidates personally, with the exception of Arthur Smith. That is the only one that I know. That is the only one who I actually have been around, who I could tell you Arthur Smith's a smart guy. Arthur Smith is a smart guy. Arthur Smith is a hard worker, and Arthur Smith is well respected. I can tell you that because I know it. I don't know Matt Nagy from a jar of Vicks. Just like I don't know Chris Shula, just like I don't know Jesse Minter, just like I don't know Joe Brady, just like I don't know Mike McCarthy, just like I don't know any of these guys, with the exception of Arthur. And I don't know Arthur well enough to sit there and tell you, yeah, hire him to be head coach. He'll be great. I don't know those guys. And what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to sit there and pretend that I know these guys based off their resumes when, again, I don't know anything about them. Like, I don't know anything about these guys. Just like we didn't know anything about Brian Callahan before he got hired. We knew what his resume was. Offensive coordinator of the Bengals, and his dad was a head coach in the NFL and very well respected as a line coach. And we didn't know that he didn't know the rules, which we would later come to find out. The reason that I say you've got to really know these guys, and you can't just pretend like you know what Jesse Minter is about or what Chris Shula is about, or when you don't really know these guys, is it makes for fun on the internet to be like, that guy sucks. This guy's good. But you don't know those things. You don't know anything about those guys. You don't know if they're good leaders or not. You don't know if they're good people or not. You don't know them. How can you have these strong opinions about Matt Nagy? You don't know Matt Nagy. How can you have a feeling one way or another about? I don't understand. How can you have a feeling about Chris Shula? You don't know anything about Chris Shula. You don't know Chris Shula. And what's funny is yesterday I brought that up on Twitter and somebody was like, so you can still do the research. Again, you can look at their resumes and you can say, hey, this guy's been coaching for 33 years and this guy, blah, 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 blah. You can look at a resume, but that's not the same as knowing whether or not that guy can coach. And when people were telling me yesterday on social media, when I said with Matt Nagy, I'm like, you don't know this guy. Stop acting like you know this guy well enough to have an opinion. And I kept saying that. People were like, yes, you definitely, you can have opinions. You know this stuff. You this, you that. Yes, you can. And I felt like Floyd used to feel talking to me, where I'm just like, okay. Okay. I mean, whatever. Okay, fine. You guys want to sit there and have opinions about Matt Nagy and Chris Shula and Robert Saleh and Jesse Minter, and fine. Go do it. I don't give a rat's ass. He failed in Chicago. He had a winning record. He was a coach of the year. He made the playoffs 2 out of 4 times. I can promise you, Brian Callahan is not doing that with Mitch Trubisky as his quarterback. That I can tell you. So, that's the first thing when it comes to all the coaching talk and everything else. I don't have a candidate that I want them to hire. I don't have a candidate that I want them not to hire. Do I have my own opinions based upon guys' public personas? Sure. I thought Robert Saleh was kind of a boob when he ran the Jets. I mean, again, he got up there and talked about Aaron Rodgers having an unexcused absence when he knew Aaron wasn't going to be there, and he knew it was going to start a shitstorm, and it's New York City, and he didn't give a fuck, or he's too stupid to realize it, and he did it anyways. That I have a problem with. But again, I don't know Robert Saleh. You know, the way Kyle Shanahan tells it, Robert Saleh is the greatest coach who ever lived. So maybe he's right. So that's kind of the first thing on the coaching front. The second thing is I have a really hard time. Jay Glazer talked about this. I have a really hard time when it comes to this job being a really, really attractive job for potential coaches. But it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter for a couple of reasons. If you watch the pregame shows, the guys who know the most are Adam Schefter and Jay Glazer. Those are the guys that know the most. Now, Schefter is sometimes embarrassing with how he presents things to get on the good side of people that have power and decision-making skills, and he'll try to do that, and I think he fucks it up and looks stupid enough sometimes. But I do feel like what I've noticed from them is that most guys are leaning safe, even though they shouldn't. Like Zach Taylor should be fired. In Cincinnati, he's going to keep his job. Raheem Morris should be fired in Atlanta. Sounds like he's going to keep his job. It sounds like you're looking at the Titans, the Giants, Stefanski's out in Cleveland, Pete Carroll's out in Vegas, and then maybe Matt LaFleur is out in Green Bay, depending upon how they do in the playoffs, which, again, we're not sure, we don't know, etc. That is 5 to 6 jobs. And I don't think the Titans would be the most attractive job, but each one of these jobs, I think, has serious warts. For instance, Cleveland, Jimmy Haslam, you've got the Deshaun Watson contract. You've got Myles Garrett, who's got more juice than you the second you show up there, which is actually a good thing because he's so good, but it's also kind of a bad thing because you're trying to build a team, and Myles Garrett wants to win right now. You've got to deal with Shedeur Sanders. You're either going to have to get rid of him, or you're going to have to keep him, or you're going to have to figure that out. And, of course, you got Jimmy Haslam running the show, so that's a train wreck job. The Raiders, I mean, again, Tom Brady doesn't know anything about running a football team, and neither does Mark Davis, who fucks it up time and time again. So I'm not sure I'd want to go work for Tom Brady and Mark Davis when they just gave Pete Carroll a team that won 2 games. And again, we all know Pete Carroll can coach. The Giants are in New York. Now, depends on what you think of the quarterback there. But you could have the best job because all the other jobs stink too. Now, if Green Bay comes open, Green Bay's the best job. And if Green Bay comes open, then who knows about Matt LaFleur? And while, again, I don't really know Matt LaFleur, and I did not like Matt LaFleur when he was the offensive coordinator of the Titans because he stuck Derrick Henry on the bench, I thought unnecessarily for an extended period of time, I will say, if Matt LaFleur comes available, we know Matt LaFleur can coach. Mike Florio, by the way, has really been picking on Matt LaFleur lately with this weird, I don't want to call it a statistic because it's not a statistic, this weird coincidence he keeps pointing out. He keeps saying that if the playoff field did not expand to 7 teams in 2020, then the Green Bay Packers would be going on a 4-year streak of no playoffs because they missed the playoffs in 22. They were the 7th seed in 23, the 7th seed in 24, and they're the 7th seed in 25. And so he's saying they wouldn't have made the playoffs in those 3 years, and the 4th year if you count 22. Well, that's great, except for the fact that there are 7 spots in the playoff field. So I can't hold that against LaFleur. Also, LaFleur went on the road, embarrassed Dallas, and played very competitively with San Francisco the next week. They won a playoff game. That should count for something. But it does sound like Jay Glazer, Adam Schefter. It sounds like we'll see when it comes to Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. So, again, I would say if I'm the Titans and Matt LaFleur comes open, personally, that's who I'd want to be the coach. Now, the problem with that is I don't think Matt LaFleur is going to take your job over another job unless you guarantee him a certain level of control. And then Mike Borgonzi, who just got control yesterday, now all of a sudden has to kind of give it up to Matt LaFleur. And I don't know if he's going to want to do that. Again, if I had to guess, I would say it's probably going to be Matt Nagy. And here's why it's going to be Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy is not under contract anywhere else. The Titans can interview him tomorrow. Maybe they will. They probably won't. They can interview him whenever they want. He's not under contract. It doesn't sound like Kansas City wants Matt Nagy back, but it does sound like Kansas City wants Matt Nagy to land on his feet, and it does sound like Kansas City thinks Matt Nagy is a good coach. I think the way Andy Reid is dreaming right now, Nagy gets a head job, Mike Kafka comes back as the offensive coordinator in Kansas City. That's kind of a red flag, but it's not the first time we've seen where it's like, hey, it's time for you to go back and be a head coach. Matt Nagy did a solid job with the Bears. The Athletic article pointed out that Matt Nagy's willing to say, I wasn't as good as I could have been, and I really reflected on why I wasn't as good my first go around. And I think that's kind of the case with all things in life. You're never as good at the very beginning as you are years down the road. Go watch a TV show. The first season of that TV show, usually not the best. Now, sometimes there's a TV show that's very good, then they run out of stories, and it's not, and that could be Nagy, I don't know. But Matt Nagy, he knows the league. He knows how to be a head coach. He's been a head coach. He wasn't a disastrous head coach. And you know he'll work well with the general manager. That's how I feel on the Nagy front. I'm not going to get too worked up one way or another. I mean, a lot of these things I hear are just like pie-in-the-sky pipe dreams. You know, we looked at Marcus Freeman, according to the insiders. Marcus Freeman made $9 million a year at Notre Dame. He's getting a contract extension. He was always going to get a raise no matter what. And the Tennessee Titans are not going to pay a coach $15 million. If they were paying Brian Callahan $3 million, they are not going to pay an unproven in the NFL college coach $14 million to be the head coach. And that's another feather in the cap of Matt Nagy, is that Matt Nagy probably wouldn't be very expensive. And that does matter around here. I'm not saying I'm rooting for Nagy. I'm just saying I think it's probably likely that if Mike Borgonzi really thinks that Nagy can coach, then he would hire Matt Nagy. And if he thinks Matt Nagy can coach, then I would support him hiring Matt Nagy. Now, I want to just get this out there because nobody else will say this. So I think I need to say this. In fact, I was going to tweet this and I decided, no, you know what? I'm going to hold this for the show. And so I didn't tweet it, but I was kind of surprised on Friday when the Titans put out the fact that they had relieved Chad Brinker of his duties as the chief decision maker for the football team and were demoting him back into what is traditionally an assistant general manager's capacity. I was actually stunned by the amount of people that think like this is not a big deal. This doesn't really mean anything. This doesn't. And Ian Rappaport's just out there perpetuating bullcrap that this had been how they had been operating. It was nothing new. It was nothing special. I'm like, no, it's a big deal. So here's what you need to realize about the Titans. And this is why the Titans are such a train wreck. I told you guys, the week that they fired John Robinson, they fired him on a Tuesday. And I went calling everybody. And I was like, tell me something. What happened here? And in the end, it was just, Amy just didn't think J-Rob was doing a good job. And I said this on the air, and I felt this in my heart. I put my head down, and I said, oh, no. And the reason I said that was because firing a general manager who's very successful in the middle of a season when you're in first place is exactly what a complete and total moron would do. And I'm of the belief that how you do everything is pretty much how you do anything. And so if you're going to make that kind of decision, that stupidly, you are one of the dumber teams in the league. The way Woody Johnson runs the Jets, the way Jimmy Haslam runs the Browns, the way Mark Davis runs the Raiders, if that's how you're going to manage your operation, you are a moron. And I felt like Amy was better than that. Like, I really did. And again, they were in first place. So if you're mad about all the missed draft picks, that's fine. But in the middle of the season when you're in first place? That's not when you fire a GM. And so what happened was Amy had gone to the Accelerator Conference, which is basically, and I hate to say this because I'm going to sound like a racist and I'm going to feel like a racist saying it, but it is true. It is kind of the NFL's DEI initiative, the Accelerator Conference, where minority coaching candidates and minority executives can go and meet with owners so that they have a little bit of a knowledge of them when it comes to this time of the year, which is hiring season. And apparently Amy Adams Strunk heard Rand Carthon talk and she just loved him. So she probably knew she was going to hire Rand Carthon based on her experience at the Accelerator program once they had fired John Robinson. So even though Mike Vrabel could see through Rand Carthon and knew this guy is not a general manager, put me in charge, let's make him assistant GM. Like, this guy, he doesn't. Amy was like, no, my guy, he can do it. And it was very obvious to everybody very early on that Rand Carthon could not do the job. Very obvious. Again, I told you guys the story about the Kevin Byard news when I was like 99% correct about Kevin Byard and the Titans and their standoff. And I guess the difference was Byard said no to the pay cut and said, go ahead, release me. And then I said that he had requested his release. And it was like, well, he didn't formally request it. He just said, if you're going to want me to take a pay cut, then you need to release me. Which, again, it's splitting hairs there. But I had the story. And I called the Titans and I said, can you have Rand give me a call? And Rand didn't call. Now, let me say this. There have been moments over the years where things had come up where I had said, hey, I need to get in touch with J-Rob. I got in touch with J-Rob. There were times where I'd say, hey, I need to get in touch with, and they usually get in touch with you, not Rand. And I'm like, that's a general manager's job. Like, that is the general manager's job to manage the operation. So I noticed that and I was like, oh boy, I don't know if he knew what he, that's general managering. I know we all think it's about drafting players, but squashing rumors or at least confirming reports, etc., that is the job of the general manager. Floyd used to tell me, I used to tell all the media people, this is what Floyd said. I used to tell all the media people, I used to say, if you've got something, call me first. Now, sometimes I can't tell you something, but if you've got something, call me first, because the last thing I need to deal with is making you look stupid and me look stupid. And Rand didn't do that. Then came draft night, when Rand got on the media for asking very pointed questions about Will Levis and Tajay Spears. And it was so embarrassing that Rand would do that. And it was so beneath the scope of the job that even Mike Vrabel couldn't let it go. 7 minutes later, Vrabel made a comment basically refuting what Rand said. And that was when I knew this guy's in over his head. And PK told his stories and everything else. Here's what happened. And this is, again, this shows you the dysfunction of the organization. And this is why, again, if Mike Borgonzi knows Matt Nagy's a good coach in his heart, I'm totally cool with him hiring Matt Nagy. Amy was hell-bent that Rand was her guy. But she wasn't actually here on a daily basis. So she wasn't in the office and in the building when Rand got the job. And Ryan Cowden was running the personnel meetings. And Ryan Cowden went to Rand Carthon and said, hey, do you want to run the personnel meetings? And Rand said, no, I'm just going to sit in the back. You just go ahead, run the personnel meetings at first and let me get a sense for everything. And so Cowden said, okay. And so Cowden's running the meetings. And then Cowden goes back to Rand and says, hey, it's been a couple weeks. You want to run the personnel meetings now? Rand's like, nah, you go ahead. So all the draft meetings were ran by Ryan Cowden, who would then get fired right after the draft, and Rand sat there in the back playing Candy Crush on his phone. That's what happened. So because Amy could not see the depths of Rand's incompetence, She promoted him. She probably wanted to fire him after that first year, like I said they should have, but she probably couldn't. For, again, I don't want to get into it why. Well, so then the Titans promoted Chad Brinker, and they started perpetuating this nonsense that a general manager job is just too big for one guy to do. No, it was too big for lazy and incompetent Ran Carthon to do. So the Titans created this weird structure and hierarchy, which, again, nobody else uses. They essentially came up with co-general managers, which is what Brinker and Ran were. Because, again, this job, it's just too big. Now, every other team just has one general manager. Sometimes the head coach is the general manager, but most teams just have one general manager, and they seem to run fine. But not the Titans, who have this incredible structure that nobody's ever thought of, which has led them to 3-14 and 3-14. So, the Titans promoted Brinker to babysit Ran Carthon. And yet, what I said at the time was, if Ran Carthon is too incompetent to be able to run the equipment room, or to be able to run facilities, or to be able to run anything that, again, somebody who's in a management position should be able to run, IT, security, PR, whatever. If Ran is too incompetent to do that, what makes him qualified to pick the players? Like, that's the most important job of the general manager. The Titans were looking at it like, hey, we want to take things off Rand's plate so Rand can focus on the important stuff. But I'm like, if Rand can't do the non-important stuff, then what makes you think he can do the important stuff? And the answer is he couldn't. He was too incompetent. So the Titans created that structure. And so Amy didn't want to go hire another general manager because her general manager was that incompetent. She was embarrassed. So she tasked Brinker, who hired Mike Borgonzi. Now, because Mike Borgonzi is not incompetent, and I'm not convinced, by the way, that Mike Borgonzi, I'm not convinced that Mike Borgonzi would, like, I'm not convinced he's going to make the Titans a Super Bowl contender. I know he's not incompetent. I'll give you that. But because of that, the Titans now are running their operations. We don't need two guys to do this job. And so that's why they put Mike Borgonzi in charge. And I think a lot of it is because Brinker, again, he's pumped all that sunshine, and the team hasn't gotten any better. When Brinker showed up as assistant general manager, they were a 7-win team. They won 6 games Brinker's first year as assistant general manager. They won 3 games last year. And then with Brinker calling the shots, they won 3 games this year. And I think Amy fired him. And so it's a demotion, and they don't want to look so dysfunctional that what they've said is, well, now we've decided to streamline all of our stuff, and so it'll be fine. It'll be fine. For whatever that's worth. So, apparently, I love how, I think I'm just a Dr. Stillman. I think that's what they can call me. According to Jeff Howe of The Athletic, Cam Ward has a sprained AC joint in his right shoulder. It is believed to be a grade 3 sprain. I'm watching the TV broadcast, and when Cam Ward goes to the ground, Cam grabs his right shoulder. And I'm like, that's one of two things. That's the AC joint or that's the collarbone. And Drew Brees, and I would care to never listen to another Drew Brees telecast ever again. But Drew Brees is like, yeah, he got hit in the ribs. I'm like, that's not ribs. That's a shoulder injury. Like, that's what that is. And so a grade 3 AC sprain, I don't know what Levis's grade was, but a grade 3 AC joint sprain, I mean, look, that's something that if you had a game next week, I think would be a serious issue. I don't think it's a serious issue, though they will do more testing. According to Mike McCoy, they'll do more testing when they get back. I don't think that it's that serious of an issue for the offseason or going into next season. But again, I also don't know that. In fact, I got a chart, a buddy of mine, when Levis had his surgery, is he's a doctor who works on NFL players. And there are, let's see. Oh, no, grade 3 is the worst it can be. That's bad. So a grade 3 AC sprain is a complete ligament tear. And I do wonder, it says treatment and recovery non-surgical, but that there may be surgery may be considered to stabilize the joint, yada, yada, yada. Let me say this. If he has to have surgery or he has to spend all offseason recovering, then they're in real trouble. Because if he needs to spend this entire offseason working on his mechanics. In fact, I'm going to text my doctor buddy. Grade 3 AC sprain for Cam. Should he be fine for the offseason / next season? Question mark. Okay. So I sent that text. We'll see what the doctor says as far as the grade 3 sprain, but I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent. Phew. Tough. Okay. Let's get into some of your reaction if you want to weigh in here on the program. And I love the distinguished gentleman. I love him. You, TDG, you know I love you. And he's like, this is all a Rand hate show. Dude, Rand sucked. And not only did Rand suck, but I knew he was incompetent 2 months into the job, and I never backed down from that. I had people, here is what is funny. People get mad at me for saying this. I had people from the Titans tell me after Vrabel got fired, and I said, I think Rand's incompetent. They said to me, you will see. Rand Carthon is so smart. Rand Carthon sometimes had to fool Mike Vrabel into thinking that his decision was really Vrabel's decision because Rand was so much smarter than Vrabel, but went along with some of Vrabel's bullshit. And I'm like, okay, I mean, let's see. And then a year later, the same people were saying to me, Chad Brinker is so smart. He's brilliant. You'll see Chad Brinker. He's such a good guy. You'll see. And again, they fired Rand, and now they've basically fired Brinker. Again, they have demoted him for whatever that's worth. The Raiders have officially clinched the first pick, and I do wonder where the Titans will end up picking. I'm sure somebody has it out there based on this, that, or the other. You know, here's what I've told myself. If you end up with the second pick and Dante Moore comes out, then you can really do some damage with that. Like, you can trade back and really build your team. But the Patriots went into this week last season with the number 1 pick. And Joe Milton won that meaningless game, and they lost it, and they ended up picking 4th. I think it's worked out for them. Even though I'm sure they would have loved to trade out of the number 1 spot with the Giants, go back to 3, get all those extra picks, and still take Will Campbell. I think it's worked out for them. It can work out for you. For whatever that's worth. Kelsey says, if we need a quarterback with the 4th pick, who do we get? Cam Ward will be the quarterback next year. That I'm not really concerned about or interested to discuss whatsoever. TDG says, dumb coaches on a designed run in week 18. Dude, you're playing football. That's how it works. If you didn't want Cam to get hurt, then Cam shouldn't have played. But if you're looking at risk reward, Cam had not gotten hurt at any point up into that injury, and Cam probably needed the reps. When I saw Cam go down and grab his shoulder, I said, that's probably an AC joint or a broken collarbone. Neither of which is that big of a concern for me because, again, I think Cam now, if it's surgery and he's got to spend all time recovering instead of working on his mechanics, then that might be a little bit of an issue. But it's the last game of the year, and there's nothing to play for anyways. When I saw him walking to the locker room, if they were going to shoot it up, and they were probably not going to shoot it up in a meaningless Week 18 game, but if they were going to shoot it up, they can shoot it up in the blue tent. So when I saw Cam walking to the locker room, I'm like, he's going to get an x-ray, which means something is broken one way or another, because they can feel, right? They can be like, oh, okay, yeah, the collarbone, okay, we think it's broken, now we got to go get it. So I knew that he wasn't coming back into the game. I'm not mad at Mike McCoy. I don't hold that against Mike McCoy. I don't look at Mike McCoy and think that, oh man, Mike McCoy, what an idiot. He ran a play. Either you play football or you don't. But you can't half-ass it and say, okay, Cam is only going to run plays from the shotgun, and Cam is only going to. No, you're playing football. That's how it works. So if you're one of these people that thinks, oh, God, Mike McCoy, such an idiot. I mean, again, you're playing football. That's what you're trying to do. Paul says, I want a backup that's not scared to get hit. Run it then. Brandon Allen. I don't know if Brandon Allen is scared to get hit. I just think Brandon Allen didn't want to get hit. And so Brandon Allen was going to go out of his way to make sure that, well, that he didn't get hit. Omar says, Breece Hall and Alec Pierce are free agents. I will be stunned on the Alec Pierce front if he is not tagged by the Colts. You know, the franchise tag basically says if you give a guy the franchise tag, unless it's a kicker, if you give a guy a franchise tag, you're saying, hey, we're going to pay you like a number one. We're not going to pay you like the number one, but we're going to pay you like a number one. So if we franchise tag a tackle, we're going to pay you like a number one tackle. If we franchise you at receiver, that's going to be $35 million, $32 million, whatever. We're going to pay you like a number one receiver. And I think the Colts will pay Alec Pierce like a number one receiver. I think Pierce will get a deal in Indy, but they're not going to let him leave. He's going to get tagged. So if you want to sit here and talk about how do we spend the cap money and how do we this and how do we that, number one, the cap is fake. Always remember that. And number two, Romeo Doubs, and I'm not a huge Romeo Doubs guy. Romeo Doubs is a legitimate discussion I think we can have. I don't think Alec Pierce is, because I think Alec Pierce is getting tagged no matter what. And he's not as good as T. Higgins was a couple of years ago, but when it comes to T. Higgins, I think a lot of the T. Higgins talk was, you know, oh my God, we're going to go get T. Higgins. And I'm like, yeah, they're going to franchise tag him. So there's not any way you can do that. John says, fifth-year option decision time for Skoronski, or is that next year? That is, in fact, this year. I believe that the Titans will work out a deal with Peter Skoronski that will probably make him one of the highest paid guards in the NFL. So we're going to talk about $20 million a year. I think they'll work out an extension with Skoronski, and he will be one of the higher paid guards in the NFL. And again, I don't think Skoronski changes the game for the Titans, but he's a starting caliber guard, and you can't go back and unpick him at 11th, so you might as well sign him to an extension when he's played the way he's played. One guy says, the Titans messed up big time winning those little fluky games that took away the number one overall pick that this roster desperately needed. TDG says, Bain is the only answer. We are building like the Chiefs. Nagy is the coach. Well, who's going to play receiver? Like, I understand that, and I'm not here to tell you that you should take this guy or take this position. I think you got to take the best player who plays a premium position, but make of that what you will. George says, if I was Skoronski, I wouldn't sign here. I'd get as far away from this place. So I want to explain to people how a lot of this stuff works, because what drives me insane, just insane, is talking to people who do not know how this stuff works about how this stuff works. It drives me insane. For instance, and I don't want to go down this far dive, but I'm sure we will at some point, Sam Darnold won the division and is the number one seed in the NFC. The same Sam Darnold that I kept saying, go get, and you people told me he sucked, and now he's number one seed. And so there are two reactions to defending the decision or the belief that you had in the offseason that they shouldn't sign Sam Darnold, which is either Sam Darnold couldn't do that here, which be the number one seed. Yeah, you're right. He couldn't do that. Neither could anybody The Chiefs weren't going to make the playoffs even when Mahomes was healthy. So you can have the best quarterback. If your team sucks, it doesn't matter. But one thing was Sam Darnold's not that good, and he's just a product of his environment, which is a nice excuse, but it's hard to justify when Seattle had the same running backs, the same receiver, the same head coach, and didn't make the playoffs last year and won 4 more games this year. And Minnesota last year, that was the excuse. And Minnesota wins 9 games. They go from 14-9 without Sam. It's hard to make that argument. The other excuse people bring up is, well, he didn't want to come here, which, by the way, is not true because I talked to people that would know, who told me ahead of time he wanted to be here. The people that didn't want him were the Titans. But going back to how this stuff works, if the Titans really wanted him, they would have worked out a deal at the Combine. Minnesota would have tagged him, and they would have traded him the same way Kansas City tagged L'Jarius Sneed and then traded him to the Titans. Same thing would have happened. But when you people don't know how stuff works, it's like, well, hey, what do I do with that? That's not how it works. So when you tell me that Peter Skoronski shouldn't want to resign here, here's the problem. Peter Skoronski is going to make like $2 million next year. And if the Titans want to pick up his 5th-year option, they can, and he'll make something like $16 million. The problem is, if he wants $30 million today in a signing bonus, he's got to sign right now. That's the leverage that is built into these negotiations. So I wouldn't worry anything about Skoronski not wanting to be here because that's not how this works. One person said Matt Nagy may be the offensive coordinator. Matt Nagy is not coming to the Titans to be their offensive coordinator. Give me a break. Kurt says the biggest error take Jared has had isn't Cam. It isn't Anthony Richardson 15. It isn't Ski. I don't know who that is. Isn't Simmons. It's his take on Vrabel. That's his biggest blunder. First of all, I want to see Mike Vrabel win a home playoff game because it looks like they're going to draw Buffalo in the first round of the playoffs. Now, I will be in beautiful Florida while that's going on, but it looks like they're going to draw Buffalo. I want to see New England beat Buffalo in the playoffs first. Because if New England loses to Buffalo in the playoffs, and I think Buffalo would be favored when those two teams play, if New England loses to Buffalo, then I think you can really make the argument that Mike Vrabel's 0-3 in his last 3 playoff games. So keep that in mind. I still think Vrabel has his faults. And I do wonder who called Robert Kraft. Because Robert Kraft wanted to hire Mike Vrabel, but he dug his heels in on 2 specific things. One, Elliott Wolf stays in the front office. Now, Cowden can come, but he's not more important than Elliott Wolf. And Kraft wants Elliott Wolf in the front office. And Vrabel can't run him off. And the second is McDaniels. And I think my biggest issues with Vrabel, one of them was his coaching staff, specifically offensive coordinator with Downing and Kelly. And the second is, I didn't think Mike Vrabel should be running a personnel department where everybody underneath him is just sniffing his butt and saying, boy, that smells like perfume. I wonder who told him. Personally, and I haven't asked anybody, I think it was J-Rob. I think Kraft was doing his homework in the background on Vrabel, like a good owner should, and I think J-Rob said, you need to make sure McDaniels is the offensive coordinator. But I stand by my Vrabel take. It was time. And they had given Vrabel too much power, and there was too much toothpaste out of the tube here. TDG says, playoff Darnold, here we go, baby, and it's at home. Well, for all you people that said he couldn't win a big game, he's won 3 big games in a row. Now we'll see in the playoffs. And the one thing I will say on the Sam Darnold front, if I may, I think we can all say if he gets to the NFC Championship game, then this idea that he can't win a big game or this idea that he's not a good quarterback, or if you really believe that, you have to retire it. If you actually believe that take, that Darnold sucks or you have to retire it. I do wonder how we're looking when it comes to Cam in terms of the recovery time and what that'll mean for his mechanics. Dustin says, I went into the pro shop at the stadium several years ago during the week before a home game, and John Robinson was in the store talking to the staff. What is that in relation to? One person says, I'm very happy with Cam's first year. Really? Like, I know that there's a segment of this fan base that Cam can do no wrong. You know, there are people today that are telling me that Cam's better than Sam Darnold right now, which is just ludicrous. You finished 3-14. But Jared, the coaching was so bad. The coaching was bad at the beginning of the season under Callahan. I think Mike McCoy did an okay job. I know Paul wants to apparently give all the credit to Luke Stocker for why the team played better, but the Titans did play better down the stretch. Now, once Cam went out of this game, I mean, it was over. Brandon Allen didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be there. They packed it in, and they're already on their way to Cancun. But they did play better once Mike McCoy became the interim head coach. And I think Bo Hardigree did a solid job calling the plays throughout the course of the year. Well, Jared, this roster is so bad. But the roster was bad last year. So I thought when they drafted Cam Ward, and I thought when you take a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick, I thought that he would come in and be better than Will Levis. Like significantly better than Will Levis. You won the same amount of games. I have such a hard time with this idea that, oh man, this rookie season was just great. The team was bad. The coaching was bad. You used the number 1 pick. You got to see a little something. And this year, I'm not sure you really saw any of that. 1 fourth quarter comeback on the road at Arizona. I'm trying to think, what was the third fluky? They won 3 games. Why can I only think of 2? Oh, yeah. The Browns game. That game. John says, Jared, why are you worried about Cam? You called him a bust. Shouldn't you want him to have surgery and a new quarterback next year? Well, if he has surgery, I mean, the season's not for 9 months. So my guess is if he has surgery, then he would be ready to play at the beginning of the year. But I don't want him to have surgery. I don't want him to be hurt. I want Cam to spend this entire offseason drilling down his mechanics. Because if he's going to make it, he's got to be accurate. And he's just not accurate enough with the football. So if he can drill down his mechanics and then figure out when to work in those backyard wow plays, and they do get a better team around him, then I'm hopeful. I'm certainly not optimistic, but I'm hopeful that maybe Cam could turn a corner. I just don't think he will. Like, I am a Titan fan. I am rooting for Cam Ward. Like, I am rooting for Cam Ward. I am rooting for Cam Ward to be a franchise quarterback. For you people out there that are like, he's Mahomes, I am rooting for him to be Mahomes. I don't think he's going to be Mahomes, but I am rooting for him to be Mahomes. Kurt says, played better. We just got stopped today. Yeah, but that was Cancun on 3 against a team that was trying to make it to the, win the division. Yeah, I think there's a difference there. As soon as Cam went out of the game, I think the team, like us, they were like, all right, on our way. One guy said, perhaps future Hall of Famer Sam Darnold can help him. Let me say this. I do not expect, and I didn't expect Seattle to win last night. I'm just going to be incredibly honest with everybody. I don't know who Seattle's going to draw in the divisional round game. It could be Carolina. It's probably going to be Seattle, or excuse me, it's either going to be the Rams or San Francisco. And I know that Seattle dominated San Francisco last night. I'd have a hard time seeing them dominate San Francisco again. That would make me a little nervous. And if it were the Rams, I probably would pick the Rams to beat Seattle. But let me just say this. If Chicago wins, and Philly wins, and Carolina wins, then Seattle is drawing Carolina in the division round of the playoffs. And they're drawing Chicago, who I don't think is ready, or Philly, who I think is discombobulated. And for some reason this year, it feels like they kind of stink. They could get to the Super Bowl. It is not crazy to think that Seattle will get to the Super Bowl. If you think I am insufferable now, let Sam Darnold win the Super Bowl. And then you people try to tell me that he's not that good. He's not any good, Jared. They just won the Super Bowl. But he's not any good. He's Trent Dilfer. Buck is reporting a grade 3 AC joint injury. If that holds, that would mean a full tear. Again, I do wonder what that means. So, here, our doctor has weighed in. Again, this is the doctor who works on NFL players, including Titan players, as far as their injuries are concerned. And I asked the doctor, I said, grade 3 AC sprain for Cam. Should he be fine for the offseason / next season? The doctor has replied and said, assuming he has surgery and it's just the AC joint, will probably be throwing again sometime around April or May, but that's light toss. More often than not, when you get a grade 3, you also tear your labrum. That is more variable and depends on where the tear is. Will probably be back fully in June or July. I'm assuming it's his throwing shoulder too. Yes, it is. Well, I don't like that. I don't like, again, I think we can all agree, even the people that absolutely love Cam up and down, I think we can all agree that when it comes to Cam, that we know he needs to work on his mechanics. And I know that he can work on his footwork even while he's recovering up here. But I don't want Cam. I want Cam dropping back. I want Cam I want Cam ripping it. You know, working on that footwork, game speed, reps, etc. I'll put this out there. Reacting to Cam Ward's injury now. Wow. A grade 3 AC joint, gonna have surgery, won't be back fully. If it's the labrum, won't be back fully until June or July. Wow. And potential surgery. Whoops. Let's get that out of there. So again, my doctor buddy knows what he's doing. And oftentimes when you don't like it, when I talk to my doctor buddy, people are like, oh, what's he know? He doesn't know anything. He was the one that was like, yeah. Remember when everyone kept telling us L'Jarius Sneed's injury was a quad? And I kept saying, I'm like, yeah, I think that's bullshit. And I talked to the doctor, and the doctor's like, he wouldn't. And Sneed was in the locker room, and they were like, yeah, it's he got a PRP injection for his quad. And my buddy, the doctor's like, he wouldn't be in a brace if it was a quad. But woo, unbelievable. Again, the doctor I've talked to says if Cam has surgery on his throwing shoulder, that he should be back fully in June or July. Which again, if this were Matthew Stafford, that wouldn't really bother me. But Cam needs full game speed reps this offseason to really hone in the mechanics. Now, maybe, this is wishful thinking, but maybe All that time he's going to have to spend recovering will allow him to really work on his lower body and his mechanics, but it's just not the same as going full speed. So that is bad luck. That is absolutely bad luck when it comes to Cam, that if he has to have the surgery, again, the doctor I'm talking to says he would be light tossing in the spring, would not be fully back until June or July. Boy, I'll tell you, that sucks. Like with Cam, look, I'm not a huge Cam believer. I think Cam is going to end up in the Kyler Murray Tua class of quarterbacks, which is they got a contract, not exactly sure why they got the contract, but they got a contract, and the teams believed that they were their franchise quarterback for as long as they could humanly believe it. But in the end, they really just weren't good enough. Kyler didn't have the ability for whatever reason, and Tua didn't have the ability for whatever reason to ever be better than just a run-of-the-mill starting quarterback. That's what I fear Cam is. But I am open to the fact that I could be wrong. I thought guys were going to be busts before that have become really good players. So I was hopeful that Cam would be able to do all the things that it's going to take for him to become a successful quarterback. And this time next year, because the second year is when you really know if a guy is legit or not, that by the second year, we're sitting there saying, hey, Jared, how about that? Thank God they didn't listen to you. Thank God they took him. But in order for that to happen, Cam was going to have to completely redo his mechanics this offseason. And if he's going to have shoulder surgery and he's not going to be able to be fully cleared to play and practice until June, when he needs to be running full speed reps this offseason with a personal quarterbacks coach and then in OTAs, and they really got to just hone in on the mechanics. And if he can't do that, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Cam to take the next step in his development because he needs that. And that just sucks. Again, I'm not going to be one of these people that thought that Cam shouldn't have played in the game. I think that's ridiculous. I'm also not going to be one of these people that sits there and gets mad at the offensive coaching staff for calling a run because they're going to call the playbook and they're trying to win the game and Cam's trying to win and they're trying to get him game reps. And the only way Cam will not have a single game rep until the preseason next year. So you might as well get him out now so that Cam, as he's learning and developing, can get those reps. And it's just one of those plays where shit happens. But it sucks. Doctor says, quote, he'll be fine by next season. Would imagine that he'll be out there a minimum, light short passing by OTAs. Doubt he's slinging it by then. Will he be able to work on his mechanics, which desperately need an overhaul by this offseason? And do them at game speed. Scott says that will be the big excuse for next year about the shoulder injury. I don't think there's going to be a lot of excuse making. The way this works in the league is you get that whole first year of excuses. Again, Will Levis stunk up the joint last year, and then Mason Rudolph got in there and he stunk up the joint, and nobody really pinned it on Callahan. In fact, a lot of you people out there thought that the Pee Wee program was going to work, which I thought was so funny. Oh, goodness gracious. Adam in Portland says Brandon Allen was so shitty and we knew it before he even threw a pass. I'm trying to figure out, again, not to sit there and bicker about the backup quarterback position, but Trevor Siemian was the third stringer. Why was Trevor Siemian not the backup? I'm very confused about Trevor Siemian. When Brian Callahan was in Denver, Trevor Siemian was the starting quarterback of the defending Super Bowl champions. And Trevor Siemian was a backup consistently after that. But he couldn't beat out Logan Woodside to be the backup here. And he couldn't beat out Brandon Allen to later be the backup here. But Logan Woodside and Brandon Allen are both complete dog shit. One guy says the Kyler and Tua comparison is scary as a Titan fan with Cam. That's the last kind of quarterback this franchise needs. That's what I worry about, is that Cam will do just enough that the Titans, so desperate to say we have a franchise quarterback and he's our franchise quarterback and all that kind of stuff, will then say that he's our franchise quarterback, so let's give him a franchise quarterback contract when he hasn't earned it. You know, Trevor Lawrence hadn't earned the franchise quarterback contract when they gave it to him in Jacksonville. It's worked out. Tua hadn't earned it. It's a disaster. Kyler didn't earn it. It's been a disaster. I believe that in order to give somebody a franchise quarterback contract, you better know for sure that you're just getting out in front of paying more money later. A la Joe Burrow, like Drake May. Assuming that Drake May plays well next year, after the season that Drake May had this year, 3 years in, go ahead and do it. The doctor has responded and has said, assuming he has surgery and there's nothing crazy going on with the labrum, he probably won't be able to throw a football period until late March at the earliest. And then it'll take a bit to progress back to throwing at game speed. At least 8 weeks if it goes smoothly. So late March will be when Cam can toss the ball. And then 8 weeks after that, which would be, what is that, late May? Would be when Cam can throw it again. So again, the summer, June, July. But Cam will be the quarterback. This one guy says, time to draft another quarterback. Cam will be the quarterback next season for the Titans. But I do fear that this will hurt the development of his mechanics. One person says they won't draft a quarterback again. They'll get a free agent. Remember, the Titans do the opposite of what they did before. They maybe even get a Sam Darnold. Ha ha. You know, here's what, can I just say this? And I know you guys hate this, and I understand it's crying over spilt milk because this was a decision that was made in February or March, and quite frankly, I think it was the bad decision that was made, and you can disagree with me all you want. I mean, I've been proven right this year about Darnold. You guys said he sucked, and he was a product of Minnesota, and the fact that he went to Seattle and he had the exact same season this year that he had last year, and Minnesota took a massive step back, and Seattle took a massive step forward, I think makes it intellectually, if we're talking honestly here, impossible to argue that Sam Darnold sucks. Now, he may not be the best quarterback, but I think it's impossible to argue that he sucks. What bothers me so much is how we've had the season we had, where Cam Ward got drafted by the Titans, and they did not win one game more than last season, which was a gong show and a disaster. Sam Darnold goes to Seattle and wins 4 more games, and they make the playoffs. And unlike last year, they actually beat playoff teams, and they're the number 1 seed. And he just beat 3 playoff teams in a row, and they're going to get the bye, and they're going to play every game at home until the Super Bowl. He couldn't have had a better year from that standpoint. And again, the Titans drafted Cam because, well, Levis, he wasn't the answer. Let's go bring in Cam. And they won the exact same amount of games. Now, that doesn't mean that Cam is for sure going to be a bust, but it's not a good sign. And yet, the people in March who were saying, Sam Darnold sucks, they can't walk it back. They won't. The people that were saying, I would never, ever want Sam Darnold when I could have Cam Ward, won't look at anything that happened this season and think, you know what? I might have been wrong. Not one. I've looked at Vrabel's success this year and thought, you know what? Maybe I might have been wrong about not wanting to give Mike Vrabel full control of an organization. Now, I think it was time for him to go in Tennessee, but maybe I was wrong as far as Vrabel was concerned. Because I can do that. I am intellectually honest. That's the thing that bothers me, is the amount of people that are just like, no, sucks. He sucks. Okay. That's it for us. I want to thank everybody. Postgame Live has been a blast. coming on and doing this show as soon as as soon as the Titans games are over, every game throughout the course of the year. I do not know what next week will hold, what the playoffs will hold. I could go live after all the playoff games. I've thought about that. Perhaps going live, maybe not. I don't know. I probably will go live after the Seattle divisional round game. If the problem is if they win, nobody will watch. If they lose, everybody will watch. But we'll figure that out. But it hasn't been a fun season, but at least we've gotten to have some fun doing this. Thank you to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Thank you to Braden 440 Sports for launching Postgame Live. Again, like and subscribe. Tell all your friends. Right here, 440 Sports, Stillman and Company. We'll be live tomorrow. We'll see everybody tomorrow live at 2 o'clock.